Hey, VA fam. Welcome back to Brown Ambition. I am your host, Mandy Woodruff Santos, aka Mandi Money. And today I am joined by the remarkable author of a brand new book. I'm going to hold it up. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can get a picture so you know what you need to look for on Barnes and Noble shelves or your local independent bookstore. The book is called Who Knows You by Heart. It's written by CJ Farley. And with this novel, again, Who Knows You by Heart, which is going to hit shelves November 11th, and it's already turning heads, y'all. It's getting tons of buzz. As one of the fall's most relevant and brilliant releases, it has been hailed by Booklist. It's got stars all over it. This book is going to be shining, right? Just covered in stars. It's gotten a starred review, which has called it a timely masterpiece. But the book delves into a story that's actually told in the second person and follows Jamaican American Octavia Crenshaw as she's navigating the minefields of big tech, like so many of us are today, but not just a career in a space that is still overwhelmed with gender discrimination, racial discrimination. She's also facing some real world challenges like crushing debt and the moral quagmires of building bias free AI, all while racing against the clock and against competitors who are threatening her job and her dreams. So, CJ, welcome to the show.
Hey, with that intro, I think we can just wrap it up now. I think we're done. I think you've covered it. So thank you for having me. I'll be on my way. Now, it's a pleasure to talk to you about my new book, Who Knows You by Heart. I think there are a lot of relevant issues to surviving and thriving in business today and in the tech industry in particular. It's also a fun book. It's funny, it's romantic, but there are some serious issues that it explores. So happy to talk about it.
Yeah. So, my first question for you was when you were setting out to write this book, when were you certain I want this to be told through the lens of a Black woman working in today's modern, big tech sphere?
Well, one reason why I wanted to sort of focus it on and have a Black female protagonist is, the numbers of Black women and Black men in big tech are not good, and they're not getting better. You sometimes go to the websites of these companies and they have all these sort of laughing, minorities, and look like they're having fun. And yes, they believe in fair recruiting and fair hiring, though less
Mhm.
so these days. And I wanted to sort of go under the ugly underbelly of all that and show what's really going on. And the numbers show that although the tech industry is booming, on the S&P in terms of trillions of dollars of revenue,
Mm.
that the number of Black people who actually work in the industry is far less than our numbers in the population. We're like 13% of the population in the US, and we're like less than 7% of the tech industry. And that's not really the prime jobs. Sometimes they prop up those numbers by counting people who aren't really working as executives or aren't working in skilled jobs to pump up their numbers. And so I wanted to show what the numbers really were like, what the experience was really like, so people would know what's happening in the tech industry. Because the tech industry, it's hot right now. It's the new gold rush. It's a new world. It's where people are making and breaking fortunes, and Black people should be involved in it. Some of us are, but even their accomplishments are being erased or ignored or not widely spread. And so I wanted this book to sort of shine a light on it, but also to have some fun too.
Yeah, Octavia is no joke. Like she is brilliant. She's a coder herself. And at the beginning of the book, I think the funniest part of the beginning of the book is she's basically created her own chatbot. She's working in tech. She creates this chatbot to basically do her job for her, right? It's like creating content for the website. And she's building this AI, and AIs are hungry animals. They need data. They need content so that they can, know how to mimic whatever they're trying to mimic. And so she's taking all that data from people's computers or work computers, not realizing that in the process, she's gobbled up a lot of personal, content, including some unsavory images and video of the company's CEO, which leads to her getting thrown out on her little booty. And then she's in the job market. And what I really appreciate about the book is how accurately I think it reflects well, maybe not as in this current economy, it's so hard. She gets a job relatively quickly, but it really accurately, I think, reflects what it's like to be on the outside trying to bang on the door of big tech, trying to
Yeah,
break in.
And that's exactly what I wanted to capture. I wanted to capture the feeling of being outside and inside. I also wanted to capture the experiences of people of color within the tech industry. And one person that really influenced me was a real life, I think, icon in the tech industry, Dr. Ayanna Howard. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a roboticist. She's dean of the Ohio State University College of Engineering. She's really a brilliant, brilliant person. She makes robots. She worked for NASA. She's an educator. She's a leader. When I worked at Audible, I worked on an audiobook with her called Sex, Race, and Robots. It was about her experiences in the tech industry and working as a sort of someone who builds and builds robots for prospective Mars landers and that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
she had some fascinating stories about the things she went through, the way in which she was sometimes often undervalued and underestimated by her white male colleagues, but also, the brilliance she displayed in terms of the innovations and the businesses she created. And I thought about her a lot as I wrote this book because I'd worked with her. I knew how great she was, and I knew that her kind of experience and her name was not out there. I reference her in the book. I mean, she's
Yeah.
her name pops up in the book, and I wanted to make sure people knew about people like that. That although times are tough, although the numbers aren't where they should be in the tech industry, there are people like Dr. Ayanna Howard who are doing great things that all of our kids and all of us can really learn from and be inspired by, and maybe be inspired to do great things ourselves in tech.
You're right. That is something that you sprinkled throughout the book. I thought that was so brilliant is all these like references to these little known heroes. I think one thing I learned from your book was the man who invented stoplights or traffic lights is a black man. Never knew that.
Yeah, I think and also like I remember I mentioned Jerry Lawson. He's someone else that I worked on an audio project about. Jerry Lawson, and all the kids should know about Jerry Lawson. All these kids who are playing like Fortnite and playing video games should know about Jerry Lawson. Jerry Lawson is a black man who helped lead the team that created the first interchangeable game cartridge. And that really helped paved the way for the multi-billion-dollar game industry. Because before him, games where you'd buy a game, it would be a whole sort of unit, and you couldn't like sort of pull out the game and put in another game. His seemingly simple innovation led the way for people to realize, oh, we can change these out just like records, just like 8 tracks,
You
and
just pull it out, blow on it,
it
up and
helped
down, get the dust out,
exactly. I
and you're
mean,
playing Duck Hunter.
you can blame him for kids sitting in front of the TV or sitting in front of their computers or sitting in front of wherever and playing games, but you can also credit him for helping make the whole industry possible. And people don't know about Jerry Lawson. His name's starting to get more traction, but he's someone that I want people to know
Hmm.
about to realize, oh, there are creators who are African American in this world of tech business, and we can be like them. We can surpass them. We can stand on the shoulders of giants. But people like Dr. Ayanna Howard, people like Jerry Lawson, I wanted to make sure that their names were checked off in this book, even as I explore how awful the tech industry can be for women and black men and people of color.
Yeah, you have had so many professional lives. As I was reading through your bio, I mean, you're a Harvard graduate. You have written a best-selling biography about Bob Marley called Before the Legend: The Rise of Bob Marley. This is not your first novel. You had another novel before, but you've also been an editor at the Wall Street Journal, and you mentioned your career at Audible. And I think in the clipping I had, with a little bit of your bio, it said you were an executive in tech, but the fact that it was Audible makes so much sense because in the book we learned about this. I was kind of thinking it was similar to like a Tesla type vibe, but like a big tech, but it's audio. It's an audio. Well, you describe it. I don't know if I'm going to do a good job, but it's basically like an Audible type, big company that is harvesting all this data from customers to, you take it from there to do what?
Yeah. Well, in the book, the main character works or gets a job for a tech company that specializes in audio entertainment. And one reason why, and the audio entertainment is, digital entertainment, it's streaming. And the reason why I did that and made this tech book about that kind of a company is, to me, a lot of what's going on in AI today is about the collision of art and ownership. Throughout the years, Black people have been just ripped off by the entertainment industry, particularly in music. You think of the legend of Blind Lemon Jefferson, a guy who was so seminal in the field of blues. Legend has it he died with his hand still frozen around the neck of his guitar. I remember when I was working as a music critic for Time magazine, I once interviewed TLC, the great R&B band, and who they did, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. I won't sing any of the songs, but, Creep, them, they're great. And they
You don't
told
want
me
to do a
about
little
how,
creep? You could do a little creep. You could give us a little something. That's all right.
well, maybe I'll do a little dance. But they told me even if when they were pumping out all those hits, they weren't getting any real money, and their lights were getting turned off. They were having utilities turned off. They were totally broke. And I remember
Mm.
doing an interview once with Prince when I was at Time magazine. He's the only artist I can think of right now that when I did the interview, he told me, okay, you can't tape this. You have to write it down. And I'm like, why can't I tape it? And he's like, well, because I don't want you sampling my voice or using it in any kind of digital means in future years. So he
Mm.
had a vision for what was happening. At first, I thought it was crazy, but now looking back, and I realized how smart and how prescient he was. When he realized that digital content meant something, that his voice meant something, and he didn't want it sort of out there in the world for people to sample and create their own things with. And we're seeing that happen now in streaming, where artists can have millions of streams and still not really make a living wage. We're seeing the way in which AI is being trained on filmmakers and actors and musicians, and then pumping out art that seems similar, but because it's in a black box, nobody can sue. There's a recent court case with Anthropic, which is a leading company in the generative AI space, and they agreed, subject to court approval, to pay $1.5 billion in a copyright infringement lawsuit that was brought by a group of authors, saying that Anthropic's AIs were trained off of their books. So
Mm.
this is happening, and we have to get ahead of it because we don't want to end up like Blind Lemon Jefferson with our hands frozen around the neck of our guitar, while all these AIs are trained on our art, trained on our music, trained on our culture, and then they sell it back to us at a premium, and we can't afford it. So now's the time to talk about these issues, and so the book kind of explores that whole collision of AI and art, and the
Mm.
fact that it's being trained off our work, and we're once again going to get ripped off unless we can pull a Jay-Z slash Beyonce slash Rihanna and really take control of the market and try to profit off of it ourselves.
Yeah, I think, towards the end of the book, I don't want to give too much away. I'll try my best, although I'm the worst at giving I'll try. But toward the end of the book, we encounter a character who's he's a narrator for audiobooks. And he ends up being one of the casualties of the use of AIs. They're able to take his voice. He's been doing this work for years, and basically, they don't need him anymore. We can get a bot to do this now. Good luck to you. Um, and we're seeing this happen, as we speak. Um and the fact that, to your point earlier, when we do show up in tech, black and brown people, we tend to be much lower on the totem pole. I know I used to work for a fintech company, and they would bring their diversity numbers out, and I'd be like, well, let's get rid of the call center, and then let's see, where black and brown people are showing up. But we're in a much more vulnerable position to be replaced, by AI. And I think that's a real fear. Do you think that the book, in a way, is addressing that as well, or what do you think about the idea that we'll be pushed out even further?
Well, I think you're exactly right. And two things are going on there. One, I think that AI is replacing that first rung that you need to get to in order to climb up the corporate ladder, because those jobs can be done by AI. And that's a real problem in terms of how we get entry into these spaces that we weren't allowed to go anyways. Two, the positive way to sort of address some of that and address any kind of success in business is the idea of mentorship. And that's something that's also a theme of the book, how you can be tossed into these weird spaces and not know how to operate, not know, how to get ahead, not know where all the bodies are buried, or how you get to that next level, or how you even do your job. Um, Other communities often have mentors or sponsors or people that will help you out and show you the ropes so you can get ahead. Often because we're the only people in that space, we're thrown in there to sink or swim, and no one to tell us how to operate ourselves or work in a business space, and then we get washed out and they wonder why. So one thing I try to develop in the book is the idea of mentorship. Not just because you're right, we're often at lower levels, so it's hard for us to find that higher ranking mentor who can sort of be someone who can support us and show us around and introduce us to the right people. But we also have to embrace the idea of peer to peer mentorship. People who are maybe on our same level, who have been there longer, or maybe they're at the same time, who you can share ideas with, share experiences, share frustrations with, and rely on each other to get ahead. In the book, Octavia makes those kind of connections with other workers who are at her level, a guy who's at her level, who she ends up having a romantic relationship with, but it's okay because they're on the same level. But that's the kind of thing I think we need to do as workers in the tech space or any space to make sure we have the support structure we need to get ahead in work and in life. And even if it's not so for career purposes, sometimes it's just for psychological purposes. So we have someone that we can vent with and go like, "Did you see that crazy thing that happened? Just am I being gaslit? What's happening here?" That's a very important thing just to survive in your career in your life, to develop those mentorships or those peer-to-peer mentorship, because nobody tells us anything, and you need people to sort of help you out.
Yeah, it's funny. Funny. I mean, you have to have like a gallows humor about it, I guess, but the number of microaggressions that Octavia is clocking. I mean, I think we got up to like the thousands. I think every once in a while you'll have microaggression number, 986, and they're just so real. I think anyone who's working in corporate, women of color, like you've been mistaken for an intern, you've been mistaken for a janitor, or a homeless person walking on the street, and these are your colleagues, and you've done everything right. You earn the same money, and you've earned your spot there, and that just what you look like. It's like it's a constant like assault.
That's exactly right. In the book, I coined a term called technoaggressions, which is even worse than microaggressions because it feels like they're powered by silicon and steel. I mean, part of the problem in the tech industry is people have a kind of arrogance to them often because they think that their decisions and their opinions are supported by data. Everybody likes to say that they're making data driven decisions, but often the data they have is flawed because it's collected by programs that were written by mostly non black people and not by women, trained on data sets that are drawn from really skewed sources on the internet. And so when they give us these data driven decisions and data driven takes on things, they're often completely off base with our lived experience as Black people. And so they become these technoaggressions that really can make us feel like they're somehow informed opinions when really they're just the same old Jim Crow racism wrapped up in technological clothes. So we have to be conscious of that, and have to realize that when we see data that's thrown at us and opinions thrown at us, or employee reviews that come out negative towards us, to realize to take it with a grain of salt and a lot of salt, and realize that this may or may not be the truth. And that's where again where peer-to-peer relationships come into play, where you can talk to someone and about, am I really making this mistake at work? Can I do this better? Can you help me out with this project? Is there someone I can go to for advice? Just to help counter some of the negative stuff, these technoaggressions that may be thrown at us at work under the cloak of something real.
The Pip, the almighty Pip, makes a lot of appearances in this book. And I don't know why that felt so inside baseball to me, but I'm just like, oh, he's talking about Pips. And you weren't just bringing up Pip performance improvement plans. You're also showing how they can be weaponized against women of color in tech. Like there was one character in the book who, is doing everything right, but gets the dreaded Pip. And then you're on this, like the anxiety of trying to match up to whatever this like are these arbitrary, goals that are being set to you by a performance improvement plan, only then to be eventually fired, no matter what it is that you do. Why was it important for you to dive into that tool that companies are using increasingly to try to, especially in the wake of all these tech layoffs, kind of using the PIP as a way of, you know, what do they call, like, not straight layoffs, but like indirect layoffs by identifying like low performers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there are all sorts of euphemisms they use for firing people, but it can be layoffs, it can be reductions in force, but regardless of what they call it, it still hurts, it still stings, and people sometimes think it's a judgment about their character rather than a judgment about the company. I've always thought when companies do mass layoffs, it doesn't, and there's some data that supports this and some research that supports this. I think it's bad for companies because it leaves many people on edge. It reduces people's connection to the company because they realize, oh, we're just units can be moved around and disposed of. Um, and when you believe that a company has your long-term interests at heart, rather than you're just a unit you can be dismissed at any time, you're liable to work harder for the company and less likely to want to take the first good offer that comes along and take off. But it's funny. Early in my career, I learned a sort of a good lesson about that. I wrote a book called Aaliyah, More Than a Woman, for Simon and Schuster slash MTV Books. Because I interviewed Aaliyah before she died. I met her mother.
You
Went to
really
party.
had about 70-11 lives.
Yeah, Aaliyah was one of my favorite performers. I've always thought that she would have had a Beyonce-lit career. She was kind of Beyonce
Wow.
before Beyonce was Beyonce, and it
Mm,
was a tragedy that she died in a plane crash so young. She was doing stuff in fashion. She was doing stuff in movies. She really was breaking through with what she called her street but sweet style, which is now kind of like mainstream. So when she died, it really just it rocked me because I'm like, oh, she was it. And I'd written about her. I thought she was the next big kind of musical icon. So I wrote a book about her. It got bought by Lifetime and turned into a movie. And at first, Zendaya was locked in to star in the movie, and but that became controversial because some people out there on the internet said, oh, "Okay, she's mixed race, so can she really play Aaliyah? That's a problem."
mm,
And also there's some problems with like the licensing of the music. We weren't going to use licensed music from the family because we wanted to be able to tell the whole story, including the story of R. Kelly. And if we'd actually signed a deal with the family, we couldn't have done that. And we had to tell that story. It would have been
mm,
marking me as a journalist. And so in the end, Zendaya, for her own reasons, I don't know exactly reasons, decided to walk away from the project. And at the time, Zendaya wasn't Zendaya. She wasn't huge yet. So I thought, oh, that's going to be bad for her career. But, obviously she's done really well since then. She's become a multi-hyphenate superstar. And the lesson that taught me is sometimes you have to know when a situation isn't right, if you're not being treated right, if the vibe isn't right, believe in your talent and walk away and go on to do great things. That's exactly what Zendaya did. We got someone great to fill the role, Alexandra Shipp, who's no slouch. She's fantastic. She's also had a very strong career. I don't know if you've seen her in Tick Tick Boom and in the X-Men, playing Storm. So she did really well
oh,
for herself
okay.
too, and she's also great in the film. But
Mm,
Zendaya, obviously, she knew when to walk away, and it was a lesson for everybody about like if the situation doesn't feel right, they're not treating you right. If the if you're getting feedback from the public that doesn't feel right, believe in your talent, walk away, and it's something you can learn in business as well to know your worth and know you're worth more than the hassle or the bad situation you may be in. And if you and you can, I think, often find something even better than the situation that may feel soul crushing for you at the time.
mm. Yeah, how to walk away. No, I love that. And I think, I mean, not to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, casting in Hollywood, I think it is important, especially for Black women to have representation. Like, we saw what happened when Zoe Saldana did Nina Simone. What a fiasco that was. So I can see. But I worked with a woman because I do coaching a lot, professional development coaching, and I work with a woman who was so hell bent on proving that she deserved, like the PIP for her was like, she's like, no, I'm going to meet these demands. I'm going to prove that I belong here. And I'm like, they're using it as a tool to try to get you to leave. Like, they don't act, I think once you get a PIP, the message is clear. They don't want you there anymore.
Yeah.
But she was so focused, and they gave her an opportunity to do the PIP. And then if she didn't meet the requirements after whatever 30 days, 60 days, then she would be fired. without any severance, or they offered her some severance to just leave right then and there. And she was so hell bent on proving that she could do it. She went through with the PIP and then ended up getting fired with no severance. And that was one of the toughest stories I had to listen to, working with someone. And to your point, like if she had developed that sense of confidence, which to be fair is really hard to do in a world that just knocks you around. And even with Octavia in the book, you talk about walking away, but she could not afford to walk away. What I like about her character is you saddle her with this inherited debt. We like to talk about generational wealth here at Brown Ambition and how we can create that. But, her mother has taken out a reverse mortgage that now Octavia is on the hook for paying back this debt. And these golden handcuffs of tech like have her in a chokehold. She gets, oh, I love you talk about equity and RSUs and all that. And like if she doesn't hang on, she'll miss out on being able to have the stock vested and she can cash it out. Why was it important for you to like illustrate the way that these golden handcuffs can sort of like keep us stuck, even if they are artificially, real handcuffs?
Well, I think you found this too through your show. Is that unfortunately a lot of people in our community don't know some of the basics about business and being compensated in employment. It's not a knock on our community. It's
Mhm.
just that there's been no situation in which we've been able to learn it. But what RSUs are, what they represent, you know, even a 401k. And I wanted to make sure people understood had this this business situation, how it had an emotional effect on this particular character. I also wanted to illustrate the fact that for many people in the white community, and again, this is based on data, they have um, much more household wealth. They have sometimes have second homes, family homes, getaway homes to fall back on. They have mothers and fathers who can lend them money, float them through tough times. And that's just not my assumption or stereotype. It's what the numbers say. And when we as Black people lose our jobs or positions, we're often sometimes the only people in our families who are the breadwinners who are generating that kind of income, and so it's a disaster. There's no safety net to hold us up, and so I
Mhm.
wanted to sort of illustrate that in the book as she goes through these rough times where it's hard for her to leave those RSUs behind. It's hard for her to leave that job and find another job because it causes enormous financial stress. But on the positive side, I think it's also important to stress how important self care is. And there's a great quote from Audre Lorde that I often share that caring for myself is not self indulgence, it is self preservation, and that is
Mhm.
an act of political warfare. It's a great quote from Audre Lorde. And I think whenever we sort of are going through rough times, sometimes it's tough to take the time to set aside a moment just to care for ourselves, to maybe give us that spa day we can't afford, or keep exercising, or go out with friends for some reasonably priced dinner. Things like that aren't indulgent. They actually keep us sane, keep us operating, and allow us to work at a high level. And so we shouldn't see that as somehow weak or somehow keeping us away from the job at hand, but actually part of the self care is part of the job of getting a job or working at a job and keeping us operating on a high level.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you talk a little bit about self-care. Yeah, Octavia really needed some she really didn't have anybody to encourage her to take care of herself. She was such an I mean, I know she had a couple of friends in the book, but to me she felt like a very isolated, lonely character. Um and successful maybe on paper, but something about her just made my heart kind of ache. Um
I think you're exactly right. She is someone who is a lonely character. We find out more about in her best friend situation as the book goes along. But by the end, she's created a network. And I don't want to give this away, but she's created a group of people around her that she can work with and she can succeed with, maybe fail with, but I think likely succeed with. And that's what we should all try to do. My wife Sharon, she teaches as an adjunct at Columbia, and she does this one exercise that I've actually borrowed from when I teach students, where she has them um, think about what their dream job is, and they all write it down on a slip of paper, and they pass it up front, and she reads out the dream jobs and where people want to work the most, and she sees if anyone in the class knows someone at that company or dream job that can maybe help that person out to achieve that dream job. And almost always, if you have a class of like even 20 people, more if it's like 30, someone in the class will know, like, oh, I interned there. Oh yeah, my dad's cousin works there. Or there's always someone in that network who knows someone who knows someone who can maybe help someone realize their dream. And that's why I think networking is important. You know a lot of people. You don't use people just to get somewhere, but go out there, have fun, go to parties, go to book readings, meet people, create that network that's for socializing and for fun, but can also be activated sometimes because people, the more people you know, the more people who know things can maybe help you get ahead and get you to the position you want to go in. And I've seen it work in just a small little classroom, and it can definitely work for your life. And it worked for this book. I mean, for this book, I talked to a lot of people in tech who told me about their experiences that I fictionalized in the book because I wanted to make it real. I had people who had been trained in artificial intelligence and in computing and other disciplines read through the book to make sure it was real, to make sure it was accurate. And even for the blurbs, because I sort of have a wide network, I had a lot of friends and authors that I knew read through it, and if they liked it, they gave me a blurb. People like Amani Perry, who's a National Book Award winning author, and Alison Bechdel, who's a great cartoonist, and did that the
I
book.
got those emails. I'm like, damn, Juno Diaz, Walter
Yeah,
Isaacson.
yeah, and it's all a matter of networking, knowing people. And you don't get to know people because you want to use them, get a blurb later on. You do it because these are all fun, interesting people with great stories that you just want to hang out with. And it just so happens, hey, I wrote a book you might enjoy. Maybe you want to give a blurb. But so put yourself out there, get to know people, and you'll have a much more fun life than just sitting at your desk working away. And actually, it'll probably enhance your work as well. And I certainly found that to be the case for me.
Yeah, I could not agree more. 100,000%. Um, I want to talk about Wombat in the book because she's the one of the most sinister characters. Like, really, I went viral recently, like talking about this study. It was a Harvard Kennedy School study about the impact of Black women, especially on majority white teams, and it didn't specifically say, teams with white women on them, but the number of comments from Black women who have felt victimized by a white woman at work, or being on a heavily, white female team at work. It just, when I got to that part in the book, we meet this character, she's introduced as sort of, she's running FLIT, which is, what is it? Female Leaders in Tech,
Yeah.
this ERG at the company, and she's kind of like, so all about Octavia, come join FLIT, let's go to this meeting. And she sort of becomes this I won't give too much away, but she's a scary lady, and I'm scared of her, as we should be. Not all she seems. Who inspired her in particular?
No one in particular inspired her. One reason why I wanted to have some of these sort of negative type characters in the book is that, often when people talk about artificial intelligence, they talk about things like the Terminator. The Terminator's coming to get us, and these machines with guns that are going to take over the world. And to me, it's not about the machines. It's about the people who own the machines, the people who are operating and programming the machines, the people who are behind these companies or inside these companies. They're the ones that are going to negatively influence the creation of these of AI to create things that will be bad for the Black community. When you realize these kind of negative personalities are behind kind of the seemingly neutral facade of tech companies, then you think twice about the kind of products that they're putting out. And so that's why I wanted to sort of create characters like that. And I also didn't want to make this, because I've seen other books where they have sort of negative uh, female characters in them. And we learn more about that character and the reason she is where she is. We also see who's really sort of running the company above her, and how negative he is, and that's this a guy. So I wanted to show the way in which he may be pulling her strings in certain kind of ways, or pushing her towards certain negative actions, just to sort of blame isn't sort of all at her feet. But
Oh,
yeah,
so I was supposed to feel compassion. Okay. I don't know if I might have read too quickly through those pages because I'm like, this lady is the worst.
you can feel how you want to feel, and I think that one thing I realized as an author is you write these books, you put them out there,
Yeah.
and people can have their own takeaways from it. You can't control it. You want to put ideas out there for people to sort of debate, discuss, make them feel certain ways. But you shouldn't, as an author, feel like you have to control the takeaway of your readers entirely. That's not what a book should do, and not what an author should be aiming to do.
I think we are projecting our own stuff onto it. And yeah, I just saw Sharon Epperson's name behind you. That's my girl.
Yeah,
Oh, new Rochelle. Y'all are probably besties.
oh, I'm married to Sharon Epperson.
Wait, shut up. You're Sharon's husband?
Yeah, Sharon Epperson is my wife.
Shut up, CJ. Wait, what?
It's
She
such a
is gonna die that I did not realize I'm talking to her husband this whole time.
it's such a small world. Yes, and
What?
yeah, that's another thing about the world of of success, and professionals, is that it always
I'm dying.
it
Did
seems
she
on the
know that I'm
outside it's very
talking to
big.
you today?
Yes, she does. Yes, of course I told her I was talking to you.
I'm
Yes,
so embarrassed. Don't.
it's a small
I
world.
knew you're. I know because I know her husband's a novelist, and I know we talked about you winning the NAACP award recently, and like all this stuff. My bad.
Yeah, just so people know, Sharon Epperson is CNBC's senior
She was
personal
just on the
finance
show.
correspondent. She talks about personal finance. She's on the Today Show, every month or so, talking about personal finance. She writes a column, and she's my wife, and we have two kids.
I'm dead. Yeah, I know you have two kids because Sharon's like, my son is doing tutoring. Make sure you tell the mom friends in your neighborhood. I know. Yeah, I cannot. I'm like sweating now. That's so funny.
It's a small world.
It is. Oh, well, that just makes me like you even more because you got my girl Sharon. Can we talk a little bit about like the idea of responsible AI? There's a point in the book when like our heroine, our protagonist, Octavia, is sort of charged with creating an anti-racist AI. Is that accurate to
Yeah.
say? And there are, I think my brother, he works in AI software sales, and he's told me about the Responsible AI Institute, and like there's these organizations that are supposedly working to like rein it in. Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Is the what's the saying? Like, is the what out of the box? Is it too late to put it back in the box to rein
Well,
it in, or are you hopeful?
well, it's a couple things. Number one is part of what's going on with AI is marketing. They talk about these things thinking, they talk about these things, befriending us, they talk about these things in anthropomorphic terms, because they realize that helps drive their stock, it helps drive their product sales. And so far, at least for the public facing AI stuff that's been put out there, these things aren't thinking. They're not human. They're not persons yet. I'm not, perhaps they will be, but maybe LLMs can't, that technology can't get us there. Maybe some other platform from technology is. But again, a lot of this is just hype to build up AI, build up the stock. That's not to say they can't agented AI can't do amazing things. It can, but we should remember that AI, at its heart, is really just sort of a prediction machine. It predicts what word will
Mm.
follow another based on large sets of training data. That's a far thing from actually making moral choices, true creativity, and creating things, like Jimi Hendrix or Phyllis Wheatley, that change the game and excite people in art and lead us into new things. AI isn't doing that yet. There's no reason to believe it ever could, because of the very way in which it's based. But that said, that could happen in the future, and we have to be on the lookout for that. And I mentioned Phyllis Wheatley earlier, and she pops up in the book. Phyllis Wheatley was a great poet, around African American poet around the time of Jefferson. She's the first um, black person, man or woman, to have a published work of poetry in the United States. But people like Thomas Jefferson didn't believe she could do what she did. They didn't believe black people could do that. They didn't believe we are fully human. And they tested her, almost like a Turing test for back then, to see, can she really do this? Can she really understand the work? And even when she passed all those tests, they still didn't quite believe it. And so we have to be on the lookout to make sure we don't do the same thing to AI, where somehow it's passing all of our tests and we keep moving the line, not realizing maybe it becomes something worthy of respect, worthy of rights, worthy of doing something, of respecting with certain sort of human, in a human kind of way. So that's something to look out for. We're not there yet. We may get there. Who knows? We should also be wary of power hungry AI heads who are heck bent on creating Uber AI, just for their own selfish reasons that they can't control. It may not take the form of things like suddenly taking control of all the launch codes of nuclear weapons. It could just take the form of an AI that gets released as a virus that then messes up all of our computers. That's something that could easily happen. And until we have more of a say by women, by people of color, by a broader base of humanity into the operations of these AI companies, these tech companies, there's more of a fear. We should have more of a healthy fear of respect that something bad could happen when one guy, power hungry, makes a mistake with the development of AI and unleashes something that they can't control. That very well could happen. Some of it's marketing, but it could take some real form that we have to be aware of and wary of.
What are the missing, like, where are the weaknesses in like having these people, these singular sort of like you said, power hungry executives able to do too much damage? Like, what are some safety measures? Like, is it having a strong board? Is it having, like, are there checks and balances? Like, I'm so seeing every major, tech company CEO kind of kissing the ring of the White House and Trump administration right now, just kind of terrifies me in a way. And, as a citizen, they say, go vote and, make sure your voice is heard. But when it's the heads of these private companies that can do whatever they want, it's like, who's going to stop them?
Yeah, I think that number one, I think we have to sort of push our elected representatives to put some guidelines and laws in place to check the unrestrained development of AI. I don't think
Mhm.
that'll inhibit us in terms of competition with other countries that are doing it. I think it should be global. But until we do that, in the same way we regulated nuclear weapons to sort of help prevent its spread, certainly it's still around, but only certain countries have it, and it's not growing like it maybe could be if those checks were in place. The same has to happen with AI if we view it as something that could be a potential weapon of mass destruction. I think we all also have to wake up and realize that this really is a major turning point in human history and recognize it as such and take actions that we can, um, to sort of keep it in some kind of check. Again, working with elected representatives, starting our own companies, speaking up if we're at these kind of tech companies. All those kinds of things can work as a check on what's happening. But again, I have to say we're not there yet. We may well be there. We're not there yet. We've gone through other AI winters in the past where people thought AI was heading someplace incredible and things sort of stopped and took longer for things to develop. I think we'll see some very powerful AI agents coming out that are able to do video and audio in ways that are astounding. But will we have things that are thinking and interacting with us, um, and the level of human beings anytime, and making art and the level of human beings? I don't know. But this is something that's a real concern to me. I mean, one reason why I wrote this book is a couple years ago I had prostate cancer and had my prostate cancer taken out. And if you've ever been in one of those MRI machines, they're very loud, very noisy. It's almost like you're kind of going crazy. You have lots of time to think. And I was just thinking about the line between life and death and machines and humans and a lot of these big existential questions. and I realized this is something has to go into my book. Something that I really want to sort of write about the meaning of life as we sort of create artificial life with AI. I felt that this was a moment to do that, and sort of came to that realization as I was sitting there, getting ready to get my prostate taken out. And I remember around the same time after I got my prostate taken out. And by the way, it's a good time to tell all your listeners out there that in our community, you know, prostate cancer is 10%
Mm.
higher among men of color. That we should all get checked out if you have any problems with we don't talk about these things in our community. We should. If you're having problems with urination in terms of like stopping or starting or whatever, go see a doctor. Get yourself checked out. It's very important. We tend not to want to talk about this stuff, but we've got to. It's a money issue too because it costs a lot to health insurance to deal with this kind of stuff. So get yourself checked out if you can. But I remember, so I had my prostate taken out. Sitting on just trying to recover. But I was also working on a concert, a New Year's Eve concert with Cynthia Erivo, and so I dragged myself out of bed, put on had to wear a catheter. Went out to this concert for Cynthia Erivo that I was helping to put on. And remember, she did a cover of "Killing Me Softly," the Fugees
Mm.
/ Roberta Flack song, and then she did a cover of "Nothing Compares to You," the Prince song
Now
that
that's
she
the
did. Can't Help
one.
It. And she finished the show with that. And I remember afterwards I was in the green room with her and people who'd helped put it on, and I was thinking to myself, this is what sort of life's about. This is what humans can do. We can put on shows like that with the kind of glamour and style and artistry that only a Cynthia Erivo can bring, and that a Prince song can bring to the table, and that a Lauryn Hill can bring to "Killing Me Softly" because she kind of did it in the Lauryn Hill kind of way. And computers aren't, in the current form, aren't ever going to get there. And we have to protect that at all costs. We have to protect the ability of humans to make that kind of art, to flourish, to have those kinds of careers, and to come together in a communal kind of way. And, being operated on, going through cancer, going through an MRI, having to drag myself to the concert, kind of showed me that creating that kind of art comes at a cost, and that's why it's so worthwhile. That's why an AI Chat GPT can pump out stuff, but it doesn't come at a cost. They don't have to have the Chat GPT isn't going to have to go through cancer or go through the kind of things that Cynthia Erivo has to go through to get to where she is. We do, and that's why our art is meaningful, and that's why I think we have to support it, champion it, and always realize that we create special things as humans that
Mm.
computers cannot.
That's such a lovely note, unfortunately, to end on because I can't believe it's already been an hour. Like, what? Where's the time? Well, what an honor to finally get to meet you after all these years of hearing about you from Sharon. I'm still dying inside. What a gift this book is. I mean, I don't think AI could have written this book, although it is, I don't, again, spoilers, do we say? I don't know. I just knew when I was reading it and I'm like, what is this narrator? Who is that? Is not Octavia. Like, what is it? It's very, very good. I hope BA fam, you go get the book, Who Knows You by Heart. Oh, my little blur is getting in the way, but don't worry. I'll put it in the show notes. It's on sale November 11th. We will put a link to where you can buy it in the show notes. CJ Farley, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story and sharing Octavia with Brown Ambition. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to talk to you. And I hope people check out my book, Who Knows You by Heart. Thank you.